are the big corporations all pooling their money and working together to fund this research, or are they doing it independently?
Oh, it's total collusion. So Coke, Pepsi, and all the other sugar drink makers fund most of their money through the American Beverage Association and other front groups. There's a big push more on the pharma side and actually food companies helping with this effort. But on right now, Ozempic is a hot topic. If you Google like Ozempic bill, federal funding, there's a massive bill that's being pushed to federally fund Ozempic. It's all these Orwellian sounding like front groups, like Americans for, support of obese people, or, Obese Acceptance Society of America. It's just all of these different front groups that the drug companies and food companies, they all band together. So the big one for drinks, again, is the American Beverage Association. There's the American Confectioners Association. For pharma, it's just called pharma. So they're able to then contribute to those groups. And then that's who I work for. So I consulted for a while for the American Beverage Association. So that was Coke and Pepsi aligning together to both steer nutrition research dollars, public affairs campaigns around these groups. And then they also would donate. It's really a question of who do people trust? So they trust research papers. Okay, so let's fund research. That's a tried and true method. I mean, the food pyramid is based on Harvard research, which was funded by the American Sugar Council, which is a front group for sugar, paid Harvard millions of dollars, produced studies saying sugar doesn't cause obesity, led to the food pyramid, basically recommending more carbs and sugar, less fat. But the cigarette companies' tried and true playbook in the 60s and 70s had a lot of front groups to produce research to confuse the issue of that. I mean, it's actually the same public relations firms, the same lobbying firms, the same consulting firms that helped the tobacco company. And as tobacco went down in the 1980s, they just shifted to food. Actually, a lot of the executives, a lot of the scientists, a lot of the lobbyists, they just moved to food. But yeah, they band together. They fund institutions that people trust. So when you look at the biggest funders of research, of medical groups themselves, so the American Diabetes Association, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the lifeblood of those organizations, which are medical organizations which set standards of care for medicine. The largest funders of those organizations are by far pharma and then food. The American Diabetes Association, you couldn't even make this up, but it has accepted millions of dollars from Coke, which is diabetes water. And then something I've talked about before, but civil rights groups and other groups that now it's a bunch, a lot of gender groups and Me Too groups to say that it's sexist to not support a certain issue. These corporations are very good at taking advantage of culture war issues to basically make it either racist or sexist or fat phobic or what have you to criticize their product. So that's happening systematically. It's not that complicated. And I think it's important for people to understand that these institutions of trust are pretty rigged.
All right, there's a lot of moving pieces here. I want to stick with the research piece for now. And I want to understand the motivation behind these groups of big companies pooling their money, basically paying to have research done. And there's, again, all these massive studies creating confusion. Is the idea to create that confusion so people don't realize how unhealthy their product is and keep buying it?
So sitting around with food executives, it's not like they are like knowingly like talking about doing evil things, right? It's like, well, we're making cheap and plentiful calories and we're making delicious soda for people to enjoy. And we've got people trying to attack our workers at harder, brand and company. So we need to fight and execute levers to make sure we can protect ourselves. That's kind of what the goal starts at. And then it gets pretty tactical. So there's just a number of professors that are just known as pay to play. And, as a junior employee at these firms, I would research, right? Professors who have taken money from corporations before. There's lists of people that are basically, what you're going to get. There's think tanks, which are, produce research that's pretty impactful sometimes that are fully pay to play, on the left and the right. So these companies have lists, and then the meetings with the professors, it's not usually a total quid pro quo conversation, but it's implicit. It's like the lifeblood of their research is funding, and it's hanging this $2 million funding, and it's wink wink. It's like, oh God, people are blaming Coca-Cola for every ill under the sun, and that's just not right. And we're trying to get some research on sugar, which has been around for and it's like it's a wink wink. But you create these relationships with professors and institutions, and those lists are updated. And if you're willing to pay to play, you continue to get money, not just research money. Also dangling there in those conversations is consulting money. So a lot of these professors are able to take consulting payments. So the former dean of Tufts Med School, a man named first name Dariush, I won't try to pronounce his last name, but Dariush, arguably the most respected nutrition researcher in the country. And it's public record. He has been paid by over a dozen food companies, not research grants, direct, I call them bribes, direct consulting fees. And he releases studies from Tufts Nutrition School, this notorious food compass. You can't make this up, but it literally said that Lucky Charms are healthier than beef and Honey Nut Cheerios are healthier than eggs. So, I actually talked to him and I asked him about this, and he's like, how dare you say that the financial incentives impact my research? That's not possible. I'm like, well, have you accepted, tens of millions of research grants and looks like over $1 million of direct payments, as he's calling me from Davos, angry. And he said, yes, but that hasn't impacted my research. And I just think it's something for the American people to decide, right? It does, the fact that your research and your vacation homes and trips to Davos, the fact that they're funded by food companies, does that impact what you decide to research and what potentially your research findings are? This is rampant. The majority of NIH grants go to professors who have direct conflicts of interest. 8,000 recent grants by last count of an examination by ProPublica. There's no conflicts of interest rules really to speak of at universities or with NIH grant making for pharmaceutical research or nutrition. So this is the game. The goals are multifaceted. For nutrition, confusion itself is the goal, right? So you just got to ask, what do the lobbyists need to show school boards, to show lawmakers? If they've got a bunch of different studies confusing the situation, they can go in the office and be, oh, no, you can't stigmatize sugar. That's not clear. It's not clear that's the problem. Here you go. If you have a study saying Lucky Charms are healthier than eggs, you can go into school boards and say, oh, you don't need fresh food. You can do Lucky Charms. This is from the NIH and Tufts Nutrition School. Here you go. So it's how do you create basically PR documentation to then go to people with money, so lawmakers, school boards, consumers themselves, to generate an expected result. So yeah, it's confusion and studies that explicitly recommend the product for food companies. And then for pharmaceutical companies, right, it's a little bit more explicit. You can design a study to say whatever you want. I think a huge misnomer and a huge thing we need to correct in the United States is that when we see a peer-reviewed research study from Harvard, we just, oh, that's what the data says. That's not what the data says. That's what they organize the data to say. And the key part of scientific research is what question you choose to ask and how you structure that question, not the question itself. I think that's how pharma research works. Every university in the country is looking for a marginal way to palliatively treat cancer patients, not how to prevent cancer. They're looking how to manage diabetes, not how to stop diabetes. That's what it leads to on the pharma side.
If you enjoyed that clip, press here for the full episode. I'll see you over there.
The medical system has been an absolute abomination at chronic conditions, which lead to over 80% of U.S. deaths and lead to over 80% of U.S. healthcare costs. That is the conditions like obesity, like